I was just leisurely strolling into a local pier park during a recent visit to Florida when I noticed a young man playing some familiar Coldplay on the piano there. I stopped to listen for a bit, enjoying my acai bowl in hand and the nice weather. Other passerbys also stopped and went. I stood around a little longer and asked the boy if he would play another popular tune for me. He shortly told me he could try and kindly did, even though he only knew a few verses and played imperfectly. I still enjoyed hearing the tunes regardless. I watched on as a few other passing curious young people joined in to play their hands on the piano too. Some were clearly better than others, and everybody just seemed to have fun. I was just intrigued watching this impromptu small community of young people in the moment, joined together by their curiosity in a public piano and affinity to music. I casually chatted with some of the boys for a bit in between, and this boy, for instance, proudly told us he's been playing for 9 years. He was clearly very good as his fingers flew through the keys. I was pretty impressed, even though I had no idea what he was playing, and it just sounded like some quantum physics version of piano music to my untrained ears. The original young man who I first saw playing the piano, Jonathan, a high school student, shared that he actually only started self learning how to play the piano a few months ago. While the other boy played a few more versions of quantum physics on the piano, I looked back at Jonathan from time to time and noticed a bit of envy from the young man's face. Whenever Jonathan hopped back on the piano, he would play the same familiar and imperfect verses from Coldplay and the other tune I requested. I enjoyed listening to Jonathan's music nevertheless, simply because those were the only tunes I recognized and just liked much more as a basic mainstream music consumer. After finally finishing my acai bowl, I went to check out other parts of the pier park. I took my sweet time to leisurely stroll around for a good few hours. The sun was starting to set, and I was getting ready to head out before the sky got too dark. Looping back around on my way to the park entrance, I was surprised to see Jonathan still there and still playing the same tunes and verses. Except this time, I noticed a few extra things on the piano, including a giant Slurpee cup filled with tips. I was going to speed over to some popular eatery for a nice last meal in town before too late, but curiosity quickly overtook as the stronger beast in me. I paused my steps again this time to engage in a longer conversation with this high school boy.
So basically, I'm explaining when I first got here. I came here to see. I came here to walk around with my family, so my cousins and my brother. But they end up leaving like 30 minutes as soon as we got here. So I just told them, okay, I'm gonna stay here and just walk around and stuff, explore. So on my way coming from that way, I'm walking down, I see this piano, and I was thinking like, oh, I know how to play this piano. So when I come back from exploring, I'm gonna come and play the piano for people. And ever since I made that decision,
Jonathan was shy when we first started chatting, but he started beaming as he told me more about his day at a pier. The boy talked about how it was also his first time there, coming with family from another part of town. It was a nice but modest pier park, so when his family wasn't interested in sticking around any longer after a quick stroll, Jonathan decided to stay behind on his own. He wandered around by himself before he was quickly drawn to the public piano. He had been self learning how to play for just a few months. Without a piano at home, Jonathan didn't have regular opportunities to practice, occasionally practicing a little at school during his free periods when his teachers aren't using the piano, or even spending his allowance to rent time on his friend's piano. So when Jonathan spotted the public piano at a pier park, he played and practiced for hours on, even if he was just playing through the same tunes and verses, the only ones he knew so far, from daylight to almost sundown. As I slowly looped around the entire pier and finished two acai bowls in between. Jonathan's familiar but imperfect tunes drew many throughout the day, even if most people only stayed briefly just till the end of his only verses, but just like me, enjoying these nostalgic melodies nevertheless. And as Jonathan's day unfolded, more serendipity also came along. One passerby gave him that giant cup I later noticed on his piano, and people who stumbled upon Jonathan playing thereafter started tipping into that cup.
I don't know. I don't know if you're religious or not, but I'm religious. I believe in God. So, you know, just believing that he's gonna put everything that I need in front of me and he's gonna guide me and everything that I do is because of him and God's will that I'll wake up tomorrow and do the same thing.
It was like a sign, Jonathan told me. With those unexpected tips he got from passerbys, he could not pay off the money he still owed a friend for renting practice time on his friend's piano. Jonathan beamed as he continued to describe me his miraculous day. He told me how he also found a book while wandering around the Pier Park earlier, and having read just 20 pages in, the young man told me it was the first time he actually fell in love with reading, about how he saw enthralling pictures in his head in between the black and white words. Reading this time was different from reading in school, he told me. It felt different from just reading to answer questions. Sometimes the best things happen when we least expect it, when we venture into those little detours from set plans, when we open ourselves up to more unknowns, but also more possibilities for magical experiences and serendipity. How often do we walk past those moments, just mechanically cycling through our routines, to do lists, and schedules? Jonathan didn't plan on playing the piano that day. It was his first time at this unassuming pier park. Yet, by embarking on his little solo adventure to just wonder, he came across the piano, got a tip jar, and realized the newfound love for reading along the way. Imagine if Jonathan just left with his family much earlier that day instead. Not all who wonder are lost. When we stay curious and be open to new things, even if it's just wandering a few small steps outside our comfort zones, because sometimes that's all it takes, just a few small steps in a different direction for us to step into a whole new world of possibilities and watch the magic unfold.
For me, it has to be putting a smile on other people's faces and making other people happy. I don't want to be rude to anyone. I don't want to, because you don't ever know what somebody's going through. Like somebody just smiling and waving at somebody could like change, like enlighten them, change the way they were thinking, maybe, because you don't ever know what's going on at home. So I take that same way as at school. I treat everybody the same at school, and I make them feel welcome, and same way I want to feel. So that's what makes life worth living for me.
Putting a smile on other people's faces and making other people happy. As simple as it sounds, coming from a simple young man, we often associate wisdom with age and experience, sometimes dismissing the younger perspectives, equating their youth with inexperience and assume they have little to teach us. And sometimes those assumptions could make us miss out on some profound insights. We tend to complicate things as we get older, and there's a certain clarity that comes from seeing the world through the younger generation's eyes that haven't yet been clouded by life's complexities. The heart of a child is pure and full of wonder. At this point in age, Jonathan is simply driven by the genuine desire to spread positivity through his already deep rooted understanding of empathy and connection that many adults are still striving for. He just really wants to put a smile on other people's faces, to simply make everybody feel welcome and make other people happy. His motivation isn't about chasing after some grand, complicated ambitions that many of us may have gotten lost in along the way further into adulthood. And it may be worth checking back in with ourselves from time to time. Why are we pursuing many of the things we run so hard after? What is, in our essence, that we truly still desire?
Maybe it's been my mom, and you know, yeah, my mom. She tried very hard, like very hard to like make sure that I have everything, no matter what. Like she's had a kid, so I now have a baby brother. So like she still tried to get me and my sister things, knowing that she can't afford it, but knowing that it's gonna make us happy. So, and only thing I want to do now is like give her whatever she want, whatever she needs, and like trying to be the best son. I mean, I don't have too much motivation except for it like comes from myself, because come out here in the public and try to socialize. So, but I say my mom, people around me, the kind people encourage you to do better, to keep doing what you're doing that is already good and stuff like that. On my way coming from that way, I'm walking down to see this piano, and I was thinking like, oh, I know how to play this piano. So when I come back from exploring, I'm gonna come and play the piano for people. And ever since I made that decision, I forgot the question.
It's okay. Just something that made you happy today.
Oh, okay. So it has to be like the people, because every time I play different songs, big groups come around, and that makes me smile. But it has to be like the little kids that I think that I'm influencing, because they really like the piano, but they don't really not play yet. But I try to show them and teach them like easy songs and stuff, and that really put a smile on their face. And seeing them laughing and trying to play the piano and stuff.
So you've
And
taught a few kids today.
yeah.
That's really awesome.
Jonathan finds inspiration in kind people, those who encourage him to keep doing what he's doing. In his formative age, Jonathan already understood deeply the importance of having a supportive community and people who help lift him. And it's a simple but precious reminder for us about the power we have to be those kind and uplifting people for others. Even a few words of encouragement, an ordinary act of kindness, could lead to much larger ripple effects, warming and inspiring somebody in ways we might never fully realize. And along with that, remember that perfection isn't a prerequisite. We don't need to have it all figured out to make a difference. Jonathan's face lit up again when he talked about one of the happiest parts of his day, as he described the faces of younger kids watching him play, about how they looked at him with big eyes full of wonder, trying to copy the simple melodies he played for them on the piano, all clumsy but eager. One of Jonathan's biggest sources of joy on this day was teaching the younger kids around the pier how to play the piano, even if he was still learning himself. Jonathan became an impromptu mentor to these kids. He made learning fun and approachable to them. Mentorship isn't necessarily about having all the answers. Sometimes it's about fostering a love for learning and empowering others to discover their own potential. And Jonathan, while passing on his own passion for music to the younger kids at the pier park, possibly also ignited a spark in these kids that will stay with them for years to come. When some kids at a park ambitiously dance their fingers through their complicated compositions, complicated but unfamiliar music pieces that didn't conjure up any other sentiments from me as a listener, aside from just recognizing their technical talent for a brief moment. It was Jonathan's simpler but comforting and familiar melodies that lingered, evoking memories and feelings, and continued playing on a loop in my head even as I walked farther away from the pier. Jonathan confided in me that he's generally introverted and very shy, but that he isn't great or as comfortable with putting himself out there and socializing in the traditional sense. Music, instead, was his medium for creating positive human connections. It was his way of speaking vulnerably and boldly, even in an unfamiliar public setting like at a pier park. You don't have to be super outgoing or polished to make meaningful connections. And at this park, without saying a word, not trying to wow anybody with his skills, just sharing something he loved, he connected us with his music, with him, and with each other in an impromptu community that organically came together around his piano, as people took turns to play or learn, or to just listen. Back in our more complicated adult realities, like Jonathan, I'm also introverted and shy in many contexts, and I feel particularly unnatural having to put myself out there in some professional settings. I pulled myself to go to 2 professional events recently. While the event topics were interesting to me, I found myself sweating as soon as the keynote speakers finished and the inevitable professional networking parts followed. I awkwardly chatted with some attendees here and there, inserted myself into some small groups where people mostly went through the same boring loops of professional small talk. None of these conversations were that memorable, even on the rare occasions when I nerded out a bit deeper into some of the professional conversation topics. On one of these occasions, I walked out of the event menu to breathe some fresh air after feeling like I just ran an exhausting networking marathon inside. I bumped into a small group of much more established professionals just casually hanging out outside. I don't remember how exactly the conversation started, probably also awkwardly as I intuitively tried to put on my uncomfortable professional facade again. But it was when one of the people out there abruptly turned the subject and blankly asked me, "What are your interests?" that I started just talking about my passions in food and animals, how I see those as 2 of the most simple but pure joys in the world, commenting on my personal philosophies about them and shifting into some of my backstory and personal values. I found myself being naturally carried away and beaming while telling them about those things that had nothing to do with the topics relevant to that professional event. We ended up having an amazing conversation around some of our shared personal interests and values. And when I had to run, this originally seemingly more intimidating group of older and more established professionals unexpectedly asked to exchange our personal contact info to keep in touch. And similarly, at another professional event I went to, after hopping from conversation circle to conversation circle during the networking portion, having mostly forgettable conversations, even feeling a bit nauseated at times while recognizing some stereotypical business school behavior from others and watching some cringy networking tactics on display. Again, it was at the closing of the event when I just happened to casually mention my very basic and not even related interests that I started actually bonding in a much more fun and personally fulfilling way with the few people around me, including with the event speaker who I actually admired the most. And we ended up exchanging personal contact with each other to keep in touch. How often do we attend networking events, business conferences, constantly trying to sound smart and impressive, handing out business cards, and in the end walking away feeling like we didn't truly connect with anybody? Even at professional events, sometimes it's after moving beyond those scripted interactions and removing our professional masks that genuine connections start to form. Living in the iconic tech hub of the world, the Silicon Valley, I'm surrounded by high achieving and professionally ambitious people. I didn't move here for any professional reasons compared to almost everybody else I met here. I moved here simply because I loved so many other aspects about the city, and it was the first place I could see myself living in after being a traveling nomad during my first years out of school. But as time went on, the bubble started getting to me. I started feeling like I also needed to care more about all the technology jargons and being more professionally ambitious. I started feeling almost ashamed of my longtime biggest personal interests in food and animals. They felt so basic and not unique. I wish I could have more impressive hobbies, like building my own robot, or with AI being the buzzword these days, tuning my super cool machine learning models, and be able to nerd out more about those topics and showcase more sophisticated accomplishments. That's not about me trying over 500 new eateries in a year, trekking many miles knee-deep in the snow while frostbit just for poutine, or traveling the world to be up close with some exotic animals. Yet, counterintuitively, it happened to be those basic, non-unique interests of mine, the ones I tried to hide sometimes out of embarrassment, that actually helped me unlock deeper and more fulfilling connections with some of the most unlikely people. My seemingly ordinary hobbies happen to be the powerful connectors in disguise. Because from another perspective, those basic interests are also more universal. I don't have to do scientific research to pretty confidently guess that there are probably a lot more people in the world who find simple joys in good food and cute animals, at least alongside building robots or other professional domain interests. And sometimes it is those more basic, universal interests that help us lay a broader common ground, finding shared human experiences and passions that transcend our differences. It could be anything. What you think might be too mainstream, niche, boring, or archaic. Just anything you feel passionate about that makes you comfortable, that makes you spark and feel alive. Even if you hesitate about how other people might perceive it and how they might see you, don't. Because that's the kind of sharing, the authentic and sometimes vulnerable sharing that reveal your values and tap into something genuine, that helps spark meaningful connections, sometimes in unexpected contexts, and sometimes even leading to more serendipitous opportunities and experiences. Almost anywhere that's based on people interactions, whether it be at professional events, social gatherings, or impromptu communities that come together around a public piano. At a base level, it's all about human connections. We put so much pressure on ourselves to seem cool and successful and perfect in this and that. We get carried away with polishing our public images, trying to fit into what we assume to be societal expectations and perceptions, trying to impress others. And we forget about the simple things that make us human, the real things about us that bond us to other humans. When was the last time you held back or censored yourself because you were afraid of being judged? When was the last time you didn't hold back around the same topic and found yourself expressing and sharing something in an ecstatic flow? I'm not saying everybody should just go be fully unhinged, to say and do things without thinking or reasonably considering other people's feelings in a way that's clearly damaging because you're just being yourself. That's not what this is about at all. But do give yourself more permission to be fully human with all your quirks and imperfections. Allow yourself to shine naturally in your own elements. And the more you do that, the more you will attract people who appreciate you for who you truly are and help you build more genuine human connections. Because authenticity is way more appealing than perfection. What started out as an unremarkable visit to an ordinary peer, spontaneous music from a public piano, a chance meeting, and brief conversations with a 10th grader, became a story about cultivating openness, Small joys and sharing. And at its heart, it's a story and my reflections on human connections, on embracing our true selves, and being unafraid to share our passions, our quirks, the things that bring us joy, even if they seem mundane or imperfect or unconventional. Confidently share them with the world. Proudly put your most authentic face forward. Feel yourself light up and sparkle as you do. And just watch how you also illuminate others around you. In the magical human connections you inspire.